In this section, we'll talk about live components. I'll explain everything about components, but first, I'd like to show you our live documentation. The documentation that we have in System Flow is indeed live because it's live HTML, and all the components that you create and all the modifications that you do across the system and your website are automatically reflected in the docs. So in the old times, we had to create a static mockup of the website, for example, in Sketch or in Figma. Then we had to use different tools in order to create live components from that. And then in development, oftentimes we had different states and different design of the component that in design and in this tool. So basically we had 3 elements out of line, but in System Flow, every change you make is automatically reflected because we have the docs that uses exactly the same classes and components that you use from System Flow. So this is ingenious because you don't really have to worry about the documentation at all. So you just design the website with System Flow, and automatically under the hood, you have this living documentation that you can use, and those components are live. You can click on them, you can see how they look, you can export it, and then anyone can preview those components in order to just see how it works. And those are live, so if you click, let's say, on the model, it will automatically open the model. If you decide to make some changes to colors and spacing and typography, it will all be reflected in this documentation. So that's pretty neat, and this is something that you don't have to worry about anymore. It just updates. If you decide to publish that, it will be automatically published. You can send it to whoever you want, and also you can just use your own documentation in order to just preview the components and states that you have in the system. But we've taken that one step further with live components. So we figured out, if you can have those components, why don't we have little scripts that will let you just use the most common live elements on the website, such as countdown and so much more. So you use them as a normal component. You just click in the docs, you Command E, paste it, and in the preview, you actually won't see the live counter, and that's because it uses some external scripts that we've written, and you can use it, you can see and preview how it works only in the published version of the site. But if you go to this component, you'll see that in settings, it only has one attribute. This is data sysflow counter, and in the value of this attribute, you basically provide the date, and our countdown will just count the time towards this date in future. This is extremely simple, one-step setup, and you're going to do it for all of our live components. In the settings, you just modify 1 or 2 or 3 custom attributes, and everything is included in the docs. And in here, you can obviously modify the styles. You have everything nicely created in the specific wrappers and divs so that you can change the styling. And for those elements, you also have some custom attributes that you can change. Let me show you how it works. In the preview, you have this timer that counts the days toward 2023. And this is really straightforward. So this is how those components, those live components work. And we're going to create and maintain more and more of those live components so that you can easily use them. And I'm going to show you now how this looks in the project settings, because in here, in the custom code tab, we include the code for those components. This is in the footer code, and we have at the very bottom section with live components. As you can see, we have few live components that are just included here as scripts, and those are loaded regardless whether you use them or not. So you can decide to just comment it out if you want your page to load a little bit faster. However, those are so tiny, just few lines of code, that it won't affect your loading times in a visible way for the user. But if you don't use them, you can just expand the comment from this live components line, and you can cut the ending of this line and put it here, so they won't be loaded at all. But I really recommend you don't necessarily care about this and leave it as it is. Thanks to those scripts being loaded at the very end of loading your site, you have them accessible in any minute, and this is just fewer clicks. If you want to use them, you can use them straight away from the docs. You don't have to uncomment anything and stuff like this. So all of the components will live in the footer code if you want to check them out, if you want to preview the code, you can obviously do it. Also here, we host them on GitHub. In future, we're gonna expand to some CDNs, but this is pretty fast, and this will let us also maintain the components, meaning if we have some glitch in the code or we want to update the component, we don't necessarily have to release new version of Systemflow. We're just gonna do it in this specific JavaScript script that we host on GitHub, and it will update automatically for all of your implementations of this component. By the way, if we're here, we also have a little thing here. This is dynamic date that we change in the footer. As you can see, this loads over here. You don't have to worry about the year in copyright section. It will automatically update with these few lines of code in the footer. And if you wonder what's the other code for, well, this is for the docs. This will let you just click on the name of the element to copy this element from the clipboard, as you probably already done using our docs. So it displays this copy to clipboard notification, and it will let you just paste it in the search box for Webflow. Apart from that, we don't have any scripts, anything that would overload Systemflow, and anything that would slow us down. So you can easily use those components as you'd expect. You can style them as you'd expect from Webflow. It's super easy. So you can have this countdown to be, the specific style. You can delete some elements, no worries. And also for the live components, you can see that we've included those live components in some of our components. So for example, this specific version of the card is also with our live components. So we embedded those across Systemflow in the places that we think that they might be useful. And if you run some offer, for example, and you want to use the card with this offer, there is a version with our countdown included. In the docs, we provide all the information about this specific component. Also, we have a section with this links to proper pages of documentation where we specifically use this component. So if you click on alert, for example, you will see that we have version of alert that will count down to some specific time. And for example, if you're running a promotion on your page and you want to communicate it across the entire page, you can just use this alert and put it on top of your page. It's as easy as pressing Command E, then Command V and return, and there you have it. Now you go inside and just modify the date so that you have the specific date in future, and that's it. So I'll see you in the next lessons where I explain the components.